Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, who is indeed alive and well and just finishing up grad school. Today is a great day for multiple reasons. One being that I just finished my second to last final of the classroom portion of my chiropractic education. So we will be moving on to the Parker Clinic. So I'll be working as a chiropractic intern for the next 8 months, and then on to hopefully, Lord willing, an external internship. That's somewhere out in the world. Preceptorship, some people call it. That's not what Parker calls it. Anyways, it's been a journey. This was my best academic term yet. So best grades I've ever received, especially when you take into account the amount of credits. And that just required a little bit of a push these past couple weeks. So I pressed pause on the recording for that reason. And the job's pretty much done. I have one final left tomorrow, but it's an online final. Open book, open note, as the teacher likes to say, not open people. So I think with notes and book, we can bring that one home, land the plane safely. But anyways, it's also a good day because I finally was able, after I took my two finals of the day today, I was able to sit down with some inspiration that I got back kind of towards the end of, recording the last few podcasts. So I had finished the last series and I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go. I think I mentioned earlier King Arthur and like knightly virtues. But that one's going on the back burner because we're in the dog days of summer. And I was inspired by one of my favorite characters' trips, most recent rendition of his trip to hell, or as it's called in the movie, Hades. I saw Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, and I was reminded of when I dug into Homer back in the day. And I got back into kind of the lore of it and Christopher Nolan's message, the message of the original Odyssey, like Homer's message and their translations. And so knightly virtues are still coming. Probably the next set later this year, like Q4 this year. So in the meantime, what does that mean for this? I started this podcast back in, I believe it was like April it's over 2 years ago. And basically, I started off, I think one of the first series or second series was like the 5 people you meet in heaven, or maybe, I don't remember exactly. You have to go back and look. You can see it pretty easily. But this is now the 7 people you meet in hell. And I find that to be a kind of a fun juxtaposition. If you're not familiar, in the Odyssey, Odysseus goes to Hades and he sees people that have died that he knows. And they each have kind of a specific message. And Christopher Nolan watered it down a little bit just to get through it and to keep the eye on the prize. He had a very specific message that he wanted to portray. And I think it's very interesting. It's a very interesting message. So we're going to try to do it justice here. Yeah. So this episode is going to be episode 92, and it's going to be called Home. I'm going a little bit out of order. There's a good reason for that. We'll get to that about episode 3. Maybe like next week sometime I'll release that. I'm going to release a couple lightning speed because I need to catch up a little bit. But yeah, this episode's called Home. So in the Odyssey, the third person that he sees is his mother, Anticleia. To get to her, we got to go back a little bit. This is going to be a little bit about the Odyssey. So the Odyssey is one of the earliest stories recorded in human history. It's about a Greek king who gets with another Greek king, reluctantly agrees to go to war. That king is Agamemnon. A couple episodes from now, we'll have an episode directed entirely at him and his ore farming majesty. But until then, we'll wait. We'll hold off a little bit. But essentially, Odysseus goes to war at Troy. He's the reason they figure out how to defeat the Trojans and overrun the city. And then he tries to get home, and he's delayed. He goes on many adventures with and without his team. Eventually makes it home alone and has to fight to regain his position. So it's a kind of a full circle story. And that's why we're starting. I switched the order of this to start partially. 50% of the reason is that we get to start with home. So when Odysseus leaves Ithaca, his kingdom, he's got a wife, he's got a young son, Penelope and Telemachus. And he tries to figure out ways to not have to go to war. In Christopher Nolan's movie, we don't really get a whole bunch of this. It kind of starts off on the beach with the Trojan horse, like it's already happened. So you don't necessarily see a whole lot, except for that Odysseus did a lottery to determine who would go to the war. And some people obviously stayed behind to take care of the kingdom. That'll be important later. We'll come back to that. But long story short, they all show up to Troy. It's a really long war, grueling. Troy's walls are high and strong. And they're basically chilling on the beach and getting battles and living on the beach. It's not like a good beach. It's not a resort. This is like hard living on the beach. And not a whole lot happens. And this guy, 10 years, this guy's, back then especially too, it's not like people have super long lives. Like, at that point, guys are like dying of just dying. Like, there's not a whole lot of time. So his kingdom's back home, his wife, his son, like all these things he needs to get back to. And because of Agamemnon and Helen of Troy, they're committed to this war. And there's no way he can get out of it. The only way he can get out of it is if he figures it out and helps him win. So that's exactly what he does after 10 years. And we'll talk more about this later also. But it's not the only way, it could have ended. He did it a very particular way, but not the best way. So he's wasted a lot of time, right? And he went to war not of really his own choice, but he still did it. Like, that's the thing. Like, sometimes in life we're not given really great choices, but we kind of make a choice that maybe is like a compromise and ended up losing a lot because of it. Well, this first episode is called Home because his wife and his young son are at home. If you know anything about the story, this isn't about Penelope, but if you know anything about the story, she doesn't remarry. They don't like replace the king when he's gone, even when the war is known to be over and he's not back. They're assuming he's going to come back. And she ultimately doesn't want another husband, so she just waits and kind of skillfully presses pause when there's these suitors that are trying to become the next king, marry her and become the next king. And her son obviously is there and growing up and could use a father. So there's that consequence, which he eventually comes home to. But the other one that you don't really hear about in the movie is his mother dies. His mother, obviously being older than him, has even less time than the wife and the son. So she, out of like grief and him having to go to war, at this point in both stories, both the book and the movie, he gets to Hades and they make sacrifices, and the ghosts in hell can drink blood of the sacrifices and speak to them. So this isn't the first person Odysseus talks to, but I feel like it's the most important. He has to hear that his mom died waiting for him. And if you know anything about Agamemnon, so it's Helen of Troy is married to his brother Menelaus, the king of Sparta. And Helen of Troy gets taken by Paris, the prince of Troy. And essentially that makes Agamemnon upset. And he says, all right, we're going to go get the Trojans. And the Trojans are not going to be easily conquered. Like, it's not a good journey. It's like kind of an impossible task, but they're just mad. But this guy basically says, if you don't help me take over Troy, I'm going to take over you. And then I'm just going to go to Troy anyways. And they're so powerful that they can do that. So Odysseus kind of trades one problem for another. This guy, Agamemnon's making it everyone's problem that this woman was taken. And reportedly, too, she didn't necessarily want to come home. She wanted to go with the prince. And that's kind of it. So, like, one guy or two guys, Menelaus and Agamemnon, could just, like, grieve. And instead, they spread their grief throughout Greece. So that's kind of like one version of it. And the Christopher Nolan version of it, the story is kind of like it kind of fell on Odysseus that all this happened, when their origin is, Agamemnon and Menelaus kind of shifted their grief to everyone else. So, and there's a lot that goes into it too. So he sacrificed, so Helen of Troy's sister was his wife, Clytemnestra. I hope I didn't mess that up, but that's just from memory. And he sacrificed his daughter to Artemis for favorable winds to get to Troy. So he kills his own daughter. Like, at this point, like, rage and, like, he's just, like, pissed off that someone stole Helen from them. Sacrifices his own daughter for favorable winds to get there. But then they sit there for 10 years. Like, it's this rage and grief and anger and all this stuff, like, it's not going anywhere. Not going anywhere fast. And it's permeating. Like, that's the thing. If you don't deal with grief, it just permeates everywhere. So that's the best course of action. Because they don't choose that, then it's on Odysseus to... I don't have too much information about that time period, obviously. It's a long time ago. It's a lot of word of mouth. But Odysseus could have, in some underhanded way, dealt with Menelaus and Agamemnon. Because of their negative choice, I think maybe the best, most masculine choice would be to kind of cut the head off the snake. If you're not going to deal with your grief, then here we go. Don't try to fight him in a straight up war, just like man to man, we're going to take care of this. And I'll talk more about that later. Because then the eventual thing was he had to be underhanded anyway to get out of the situation, but it was already 10 years later. So he could have dealt with the issue early and often. Instead, he let it fester. And all this stuff happened. So his mother obviously knows all this, knows that it's ridiculous, knows that there's really no way out. I mean, there's one way out, but it's kind of crazy. And yeah, so it's like she doesn't have any power to stop it. So she just has to watch her son leave with, maybe half the kingdom. They all get on boats and they go to Troy. And that's a whole lot of grief for someone to feel, kind of not by choice. It's not like for a good cause. It's one thing if you go to war and it's like, okay, we got to do this, and it's for sure like this is a problem and I'm going to sacrifice for my kingdom. But they're not sacrificing for their kingdom. They're sacrificing for somebody else's kingdom, but not even kingdom, more like feelings. So that's one thing about being mortal, is we only have so much time. And so he's off doing this, someone else's fool's errand, and he's just losing time. And he tries to comfort his mom, and he can't touch her because she's dead. So he, sacked Troy, fights monsters, deals with Cyclops, survives storms, gets all the way to hell, and he can't, even just like be with his mom, like be there for her. The cost of his absence is a massive cost. The world changes while we are off on a fool's errand. And I think this just it's home for me in a lot of ways. Because most of my life, I feel like I haven't quite known what I'm doing with my life, per se. And hindsight being 2020, I can look back and say that now everything that's ever happened to me is super relevant in some way to my chiropractic journey. And there are so many things I didn't understand when I was younger. Things that happened to me that seemed pointless or seemed senseless. And with hindsight, it just makes total sense. And there's slight deviations, maybe ways I could have shaved off some time to go a little bit more direct to my goal, but still, like, the particular way it happened was a particular type of magic that I just don't know if it could have been recreated any other way. But you look at Odysseus' story, and I mean, the end is, he's reunited with his family, but he has to fight all these suitors, and the city of Troy dies, and a lot of people die. He had to be underhanded in kind of a big way that led to a lot of deaths. And like you could see in Odysseus' story, like ways that he could have cleaned it up. And I don't know, just given where I started and where I've ended up, like I don't know if there's ways I could have necessarily cleaned up my path. Like I genuinely had to like do everything I did and feel everything I felt to be the person I am today. But with Odysseus, he was kind of already there with the kingdom and was like, it's funny, he's like at the kind of the peak of his journey, and like my peak is just happening late. And it's like once you've peaked, then it's really just maintaining the peak. But before you get to the peak, anything that happens to you that results in you being stronger or better or smarter or whatever is still like getting you to the peak. But once you're at the peak, like there's only decay. So his decay started the day that Agamemnon showed up and demanded that he go to war with him. So it's particularly interesting to me because I think in the past maybe I felt like I already peaked and that I was losing something. And what I didn't realize is that I hadn't peaked at all. I was gaining skills and experience and wisdom that will make me, if I just left Harvard and went straight to chiropractic school, I would have been a pretty average chiropractor. Now, by now I would be a better chiropractor, but I don't know what that life looks like. In particular, because the other path that I took was so far off the beaten path. Like it's like Odysseus' journey in that it's wild, it's random, it's crazy. And it was exactly what I wanted to do at that time. Like I just didn't let anyone tell me where to go. I followed my heart in that way. I followed what excited me, and even to my own detriment sometimes. But like I'm still here and I'm doing what I need to be doing. So it is interesting because it feels like I've lived an Odysseus type life, but I never peaked first. So maybe I think that's like the best thing to do is like not to have a bucket list, but just to like live life full speed from the go and like do crazy things like go to Harvard when you don't belong there and are not prepared, or you know, when you leave Harvard, don't take a Harvard job and like go work in all these jobs that don't make you that much money, but you learn incredible things, and you follow what you're interested in, and you like truly learn, even if it's not profitable at that time. It's becoming profitable to me now. Like, it will be profitable to me. I'll be a much better doctor, and I'll have gained experience that I could never gain. I don't know that it would be possible to gain it now after becoming a doctor. Like, you almost like become a doctor and you think you know, like, but because I did it beforehand, I realized the vast amount that I don't know. So in my little, I mean, I didn't even choose this necessarily. I just followed my heart, and the inversion happened naturally. So now I get to have this Odysseus journey and then go peak, instead of being good and neat and tidy and doing everything I'm supposed to do early in life and then falling apart and having a midlife crisis. You know, it's like kind of the opposite. You know, I kind of fall apart and be crazy early on, and then I peak, and I'm able to be orderly as I head into old age, and peak, and then have like true mastery and know that I don't want to be anywhere else in the world other than my practice. And like, it's like going into it not having any other unfinished business. Like, I'm starting this internship, and it's like there's just nowhere else I want to be for the next 8 months. And every day I wake up with the intention of doing my best, and every night I come home with the intention of getting sleep to wake up tomorrow and do my best. And like, that's a gift that is just of infinite value. And you know, I didn't give it to myself. It's like, honestly, it comes from the heart, essentially. Like, I did give it to myself, just not consciously. So, yeah, that's what kind of started off this whole interest in the Odyssey. And not only that, but Christopher Nolan's adaptation is a very interesting commentary, and I want to get into that. So the next couple episodes are going to be that specifically. I mentioned there are 7 people in the book, The Odyssey. 7 individuals. He sees other people outside of the 7, but the 7 that I have listed here, I feel like are the most important. He sees his mother third, but the next 3 people are the same 3 that he sees in the movie adaptation. So first and foremost, we'll get into, in the book, we have I'm trying to get this guy's name, Elpenor. And in the movie it's Sinon, but it's a similar thing. Sinon in the movie is kind of like a mixture of Achilles and Elpenor from the book. Achilles is not in the movie, but Elpenor is in the movie. So we'll get into a little bit of the difference there. That'll be episode 3. Episode 2, next episode is going to be about Tiresias. He's the prophet that resides in Hades, and that's who Circe, the witch, sends Odysseus to Tiresias to figure out how to get home, because he figures out that they're lost and they need to get home. And he would know. So he's kind of the figure, kind of the gatekeeper of hell in a way, to a little degree. So it's going to be Tiresias, And then, yeah, so Tiresias talks to him in the movie, then Sinon, who's going to be Elpenor in episode 3 from the book. We'll talk about how those characters kind of mean the same thing but different. And then the last one's going to be Agamemnon. And we're going to bring some of what I talked about today home with Agamemnon. Talked a little bit about his story today, but what a mess. So I think to sum it up today, before we get into Nolan's Odyssey fully, today was about home. And I think it's one thing if you establish a home and you kind of have unfinished business, or you get roped into someone else's unfinished business and abandon your home, there's a massive cost to that. And I feel like Odysseus could have avoided it, giving into his underhanded, kind of nature. We'll talk about this in the Agamemnon episode, but being clever and underhanded sooner to preserve home, like home wherever you find it should be preserved at nearly all costs, aside from life, because then home isn't home without the people. But it's like this whole thing is he kind of put off this decision to be underhanded for 10 years. And it cost him an additional 10 years. So he got home after 20 years. And that's the punishment. It's almost like, in the book of John, Jesus says, if a man asks you to walk a mile with them, you walk 2. And the gods in the Odyssey, Zeus and all the other gods, Odysseus wasted 10 years and he ended up losing 20. He should have just brought that decision right to the front. And, Agamemnon and Menelaus are being unreasonable. This woman, you can almost smell it, I guess, kind of if they went to Troy and she didn't come out, I don't know, after 10 years they weren't able to get her out, and the Trojans didn't willingly give her up. I don't think she wanted to leave. I think they were protecting her. So don't let it go 10 years. Preserve home at all costs, and certainly don't wait. If you want to, preserve virtue, but it's going to cost you all those lives, and you're going to end up losing your virtue, your honor anyways. What's the point? You just got to do it up front. And I think that's part of it too, is the cost is the cost. And you can pay, a dime, or you can pay $1. I would rather pay a dime, because that is just the way it is. It's less expensive because we only have so much life, so much time on this earth. So, something to think about. I hope you enjoyed that little conundrum as much as I did. Until next time, this has been Blaine. See you later.